Hello, 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 and welcome back to This Is Me Attitude podcast with me, your one and only host, Rachel Nelson, just a girl in her 20s trying to figure this crazy life out and bringing you along the way every single step of the way. And today is no different as I get to announce a pretty exciting thing, and today's episode looks a little different, so let's dive in with another guest speaker. Welcome back to This Is Me Attitude podcast. I am so excited to announce another guest speaker. And today, I'll be honest, we also have a bit of a surprise to show or to tell everyone, I should say. And you will understand as we get going in the questions. But before I go any further, a huge welcome and just excitement for the conversation to Sandra. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. And before we jump into the questions, I just want to make sure that I leave an open and big area for you to introduce yourself to the listeners if you would like a little bit more.
Absolutely. So, like she said, my name is Sandra. I'm coming to you today from Washington State, where I have lived as long as I can remember. Let's see. I have a 15-year-old daughter. She is amazing. God has very much blessed me with a wonderful teenager, and we are in the season of volleyball. So she keeps me very busy, along with our two Aussie doodles and four chickens. Life is full. So in my free time, I am a registered dietitian.
I love it. Thank you for sharing all that. I honestly didn't realize you guys had that many pets, so that definitely sounds like a full
Yeah.
family.
Yep, they keep me busy, on my toes on a regular basis.
So cool. And I can definitely relate to the season of sports. I remember that very, very well and how busy it is.
Yes, yes, it is.
Well, amazing. I will jump right into the questions then, with the first being when and how did you become a Christian slash accept Jesus into your life?
Yeah. So I was fortunate to be raised in a Christian home. My family, so we were military for the very, very beginning part of my family, but life, but we landed here in Washington State when I was in kindergarten. So found our church home. And that was great. Did all the things right, like summer camps and youth group, and helped out in kids ministry and all of that. Was baptized as a teenager. Um, and then to be honest, when I got towards my end of my high school years, I kind of started doing my own thing and trying to figure out who I was and what that needed to look like. I was very quiet and pretty shy as a young lady, and started exploring in different areas, and had kind of a hiccup in my family. My parents got divorced, and that shattered things. So really at that point, I'd say I moved kind of doing my own thing. I started going to church and just kept going with living life, which, wasn't a bad thing, but it wasn't all the right choices. And it definitely was not what God had planned for me. After fast forward lots of years, because there's lots within that, having my daughter reminded me of the community and of church and all the things that I wanted for her and the life I wanted for her and what I wanted her to grow up in. So that really spun me back into searching for my new church home and reconnecting with God. He never left me, and he's shown me that a million times. But for me, I had to reconnect, dive back in, start getting back into the word. And several years ago now, I baptized again and volunteer and do a lot within our church ministry to help young people now. As far as like growing up, my relationship with God, he's never left. I took a little side turn and had to turn around and come back and be like, you are can't do life without God in it. I don't know how anybody can. Life gets a little crazy. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. I just want to make sure I wasn't cutting you off no, I definitely think that listeners, you can take multiple different aspects from Sandra's little bit of the story that she mentioned, because I definitely know that you're not the only Christian to walk the face of the earth that is strayed away from God and come back or have
Yeah.
and then realize that he's always been there the whole time.
It's amazing, and it could be a whole podcast, right, in itself. So I would keep it short, keep it sweet. But yeah, God is good. We serve a good God. He definitely never leaves us, even when we decide to take little side turns. he knocks on the door and says, I'm still here when you're ready.
Yeah, and that's a really good aspect to point out even more that it's our choice to follow God. Like he's not going to be the father that pushes us to believe in him. Like we can decide not to. I mean, obviously, as a Christian podcast and as Christians ourselves, like we do follow him and did make the choice. And that's what I really hope everyone that I come in contact with can, so they can go to eternity with the Lord. But it's also just, it makes me feel more even the love from God that he isn't demanding and is like, well, if you don't do this, like this, and this, and when it's okay, when it's on your time, or when you see the right thing. And I mean, he has the plan all the way throughout. So I'm sure when you were not as close with him, he knew, I mean, he obviously knew the plan and eventually would be where you're at now. And the fact that your story comes to where you get to talk to people that are in that stage of life now and be able to help, I think is just really cool. And the aspect of, I'm sure your experiences have been able to help others and hopefully make it to where people don't go astray from God, if that's even the correct term to use, but to keep with him and to keep him as the focus of life overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I find it absolutely an honor and a blessing to be able to work in that age group, but also just to be able to be like, we serve a good God. He will never leave you. And I want to help if I can, but words of wisdom to like keep people from making some of those choices, but to also understand that if you aren't too far away, right? God still loves you and you still have people that he'll put in your life that can talk you through it and talk to you about it and be as open, as honest as possible. So it is a beautiful thing.
And with that, it goes into our second question of where have you seen God work the most in your life?
Yeah. Obviously, I think as we get older, we see lots of stuff in retrospect. We look back and go, oh, yeah, it's okay. So that was him. This was him. And you can it's the beauty of it. You can like see all the little broken pieces, how he brings them back together. But if I'm going to be real specific about probably the most impactful was right in that same time frame when my daughter was very young and investing back in church, reading my word every day, going for what I called prayer walks at the time and just saying, God, what do you have for me? What should we be doing? Is there something that I'm not listening to or that I need to move? And I was feeling in my spirit like a really big stir of like there's something that needs to change. And this has happened in different seasons of life. And with that, God started putting people. It was beautiful and it was so cool to see like he would just put people that I didn't even know would show up to my work. I was a waitress and I had this table that I was waiting on, and I was thinking about going back to school and not really sure what to do. And this man stood up as they were leaving and he's like, I got the best 10 two-letter words for you. And I said, what's that? And he goes, if it is to be, it is up to me. And of course, I had to go write it down, right? Because that's what I like wrote it down in my like notebook and was like, is there really two letters? Is there 10 of them? And that I knew that that was God's way of being like, you have to put one foot in front of the other. Like, if you want to see if this is what you're supposed to do, you got to walk. And I will open the doors. It's not you. You don't have to like worry and stress and do it all. It is me. And so that was my start into actually going back to school. So at the time, I had a business with my mom. It was amazing. I had my daughter, we had our place. Like life wasn't bad, but it wasn't all that I knew God had for us. And so I started back in school and it was like one thing after the other, after the other. I could just see God's hand moving in things that shouldn't have been able to happen. At the time, I was a single mom. So, as a single mom and trying to work full time and put myself through school to finish school and not have any student loans or debt, to be able to like get to where I had to commute when I transferred for my second half of my degree, to commute anywhere between an hour and a half to 3 hours a day, just depended one way on traffic. And to be able to do that and to actually finish and to be able to still have the capacity to get to where I was going was beautiful. After my first year on that commute, I literally prayed and God and I've had a few yelling matches where I was like, I can't do this. And he waited for me to get done screaming and he's like, you done yet? And it was so funny because it's so just gentle, right? It's like, cool, when you're done, I'm still here. And I got home and opened my mailbox, and there was literally a scholarship that I had not even applied for with a check in the mail for the next year. And it didn't cover all of it, but it covered a good chunk of it. And I was like, I literally grabbed it and I said, fine, winnow. I was like, guess we're doing another year of school. And it's been beautiful. Here's the deal. It's helpful when God helps you see, even when it's hard, that you're headed in the direction he wants you to. And that's what I would say I learned in that season is he was showing me like, this is hard. These are things that are not, it's not easy. And the closer you get to the goal, the harder it's actually going to get because the enemy doesn't want you to get there. But if you continue to walk in what I'm asking you to walk in and walk through the doors that I open and see the doors that I'm closing and pivot when I tell you to, I'm there, you'll make it. You just got to keep going.
So many good things, and so many things
Yeah.
I feel like I could take from just that one particular question. The biggest being just continuing to listen to the Lord. And I like that you were open and honest to the fact that you were frustrated in that moment and that you said that you brought your emotions to God because he created us. He created the emotion. He can
Mhm.
handle upset. He can handle us crying. He can handle us yelling. Not saying that that's what you should go to God every single day and just yell at him because that's obviously not going to be a good turnout, I don't think. But just to show that it doesn't have to be a quote unquote perfect prayer every time when you go and pray to God, or it doesn't have to be the Lord's Prayer every single time. Just the fact that He is our loving Father and He's there for all of us to vent to sometimes, to be like, "Well, I don't understand a single thing you're doing, God. Like, what is this?" And I'm sure in that moment of when you got or opened your mailbox and saw that, it was obviously you seeing that God wanted you to move forward, but still being frustrated because that didn't mean that the hour and a half to 3 hour drive disappeared. Like, you still had to do that. And I think that's another really good aspect to add on because like you were saying, even if we are headed in the right direction, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be quote unquote fun every single day for us. I mean, there is going to be hard seasons that we're called to do things that might not be all that exciting or all that fun, but we still know that God wants us to grow through that season or to do whatever the particular thing is.
Absolutely. I think sometimes we have this idea that if God called me to it or if he's in it, it's not going to be hard. And then when it starts to get hard, it's like, oh, well, this must not have been God, or this must not be what I was supposed to do. Where did I go wrong? And I think those are the moments that I'm not telling anybody ever. I never tell them like that's not accurate. I'm like, you need to pray about it because God will show you in some way whether or not that's accurate. Like, was this not, did you not hear from him? Was this a learning experience? Because I've done some hard things that I was like, oh God, has got this or he's moving me in this direction. And all of a sudden I'm like, that went super sideways. But even in that, he's shown me like this was a learning opportunity and this is what I wanted you to gain from this, or this is where I wanted you to learn to trust me in this. And so always take it back to God, always. And he'll be like, yeah, this is hard. I know it's hard. Keep walking. Or he'll be like, yeah, this is where I want you to, take a turn. And it doesn't always come instant. Doesn't always come instant. I did a walk and pray for 4 months when I tried to figure out where I was going to go to school, what I was going to go for, what degree I was going to go for. Before it took, 4 or 5 months of praying daily about it and searching and journaling and then writing it down and just asking before I felt clarity in exactly what that was supposed to look like.
I agree. That all really good things. And I also liked how you said that it doesn't happen instantly. Yes, God
Mhm.
does have the power to have things happen in a moment if that's what his will is for us, but then there is also seasons where it does take more than one prayer. It's not just a matter of, oh, one time I prayed for this one thing and it happened. Well, sometimes it takes months, like Sandra was saying, sometimes it takes years. It really just depends on what God's timeline is. And I know that's something that I've mentioned on other episodes before of talking about God's timeline compared to ours, because that's been a huge part of my story and really seeing the difference because like I've mentioned also, I would love to have everything planned out. And I honestly feel like God's like, that's cute. Like, nope, you're going this way. Like, good try. You did not need to plan all of that. And that could also be for you listeners in your walk as well. So that also goes into the next question, which is what made you decide to share your faith so much with those around you?
Yeah, I think we did kind of touch a little bit on that aspect of kind of what that looks like for me. But I think when it comes to the idea of sharing your faith, a lot of times we think of the words, right? Because it says scripturally, like, you are, to go and to share the gospel and to be my hands and feet and to do all these things. So we're supposed to go. We don't keep it to ourselves. We're supposed to go out and share it with the world, right? It's not like this like best kept secret. It's something that is supposed to go out. So I think that's the why behind it. But one thing for me when it comes to sharing my faith and what that looks like, our actions, I think sometimes we forget are a great way to share our faith. It says, you will know them by their fruit. And so you're out there. And so, like, I'm just starting a social media presence and I'm doing all these things. And I'm thinking, if I don't have the fruit, if I'm not showing people, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, right? If I don't have self control, even if my words are just glorious and beautiful, they're going to so fall short. And so I'm definitely for years been walking through this with God of going, okay, how do I show my faith in order to share my faith? Because if you're walking and you have that fruit, people will notice that you're different and they're like, hey, I mean, I've had someone actually walk up to me and be like, are you a Christian? Because this is weird. Like, why are you helping in this fashion? Like, this isn't what your job is supposed to do. You're supposed to be, whatever. And so I think that's just a good, I call it the little sparkle reminder where you're just like, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing when people recognize that you're different. So I think that that's like a huge thing for me. And then the working in kids ministry, youth ministry, women's ministry, I love it. I just love being able to be a support for other people. Helper is part of my nature, that God has gifted me with. And so I don't think I have much of an other choice except for to do that.
Yes, I agree. And I like how you brought it down to the simple terms of what it is said in scripture of that we do need to go out and share the gospel and to share what God has done. And also really like how you said in your actions as well, because I mean, actions speak louder than words. That's a phrase that is so popular, but it's very much the
Mhm.
truth. And when it comes to really anything, and this is the best example of that, if you go out into your workplace or go out into any part of public and you act mean, like people are going to see that. Or if you, on the flip side, act nice and do show the spirits of the fruit, yeah, I almost feel like I said that backwards, but but to really show what God has done for you in your life and just it gets to a point where it's almost hard not to share. At least that's how I felt. And the more that I share my faith on the podcast or just in general, like I love connecting with other people and be like, oh, what has God done in your life? Or like, what's your Jesus story? Or however you want to phrase it. And it's just exciting to see more and more people seeing that and more people being okay and bold and obedient and sharing what God has done in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wonderful. And it's so much fun when you're on this like journey with Jesus, right? It's not boring. That's for sure. And it's exciting when you start to look for it.
For sure. I like how you said that it's not boring because that is not a word I would ever associate with Jesus or the Bible or God or any aspect of the faith because you, as believers and as just somebody to read the Bible, you learn so much and learn so much about other people too. Because once you, this is also from my personal experience, but I've noticed now once I make it known that I'm a Christian or that I share a little bit of my story or testimony, people are so much more likely to share theirs with me. And I sometimes just meet people and they share some really deep and big things. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm so glad that you feel comfortable and confident enough to share all that. Like, thank you. And just really holding a space for people because, especially in the world we live in now, it's, as everyone knows, not always exciting and happy and all the things. So to be able to hold that space for somebody else and be like, oh no, like I relate here, I understand, or I know somebody that's been through something similar, that's can be something that's really helpful and beneficial for the person that you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So now this comes to the big part of the episode where I get to share some exciting news. And the reason that I picked to share the exciting news with Sandra as my guest speaker is because we're actually about to talk about her business and it will relate to the news I'm going to share. So, with that, listeners, I am very
I feel
excited
like we need a drum roll. We need a
to.
drum roll. Like, you
I
gotta
know
put one
I
in
don't
there. Okay.
have anything. But anyways, if I had a drum roll, I would totally do it at this moment. But listeners, for those that have been listening for a while, you might have noticed that I haven't fully come out and announced something particular, and that I've kind of held something back, or look like I'm hiding something. And it's not that I'm hiding it. I was just waiting for the perfect moment to announce. But my husband and I are expecting our first baby, and I am so excited. And the reason, again, that I chose to talk about this particular big life event with Sandra is because she actually works with mamas and babies and the dietitian part of it. So, with that exciting news, I'll hand it over to you, Sandra, if you want to explain more.
No, I don't even wanna, like, go into my business stuff, that's not fun. The, like, pregnant part of it's the fun part, but yeah, I was so excited and I was so honored when we talked about this ahead of time and she said she was gonna share the big news with all of you on this episode because it is super near and dear to my heart. Like I mentioned, briefly earlier, I'm a dietitian, that's what I went to school for, and very much feel led to do that, so it was awesome that we have connected in this area because my business has changed a lot in these past couple of years. God gave me a vision, my goodness, 6, 7 years ago now. The name Rooted really came to me. I was actually at a church service and I saw it, and the T in the word rooted was a tree, and like the roots were going down and like spreading out underneath the rest of the letters, and the tree part was kind of growing up, and it was like super, it was so beautiful, and I drew it, and I wasn't exactly sure what that meant, but I knew that it was going to be my business name, which was weird. I didn't have a business. And life, fast forward, kept going, right? And I did a lot of general nutrition, worked heavily with like some surgeons, general and bariatric surgeons. And several years ago, found this certificate program in fertility nutrition and was really excited about this idea of moving into that space and learning more about it. And preventative medicine, right? What's the best preventative medicine? It's starting before we start, like we start new life, before creation of new life within us, getting our bodies ready for that. So I could talk about that all day. But yes, so I moved into fertility nutrition space and took my course in that, then moved into pregnancy nutrition, took my course in that, and that was really where I felt God was like, this is an area that is needed, where people and providers of faith and people that can sit with people through some hard things, a lot of stuff. There's some hard things that come in the area of fertility and pregnancy and postpartum in nutrition. So now I do early life nutrition. My business name is Rooted Nutrition, and early life nutrition, working with people through the fertility space, through pregnancy, and then on through postpartum after having their babies. So it is such an honor and a blessing to be able to work in this field, and then getting to meet wonderful people and pregnancy announcements. So fun.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Sandra. And I'm very excited for baby Nelson to arrive. A due date
Yeah.
is the end of January. So I will definitely keep listeners, you, as up to date as possible with all of the things. With that being said, for those that maybe have never been pregnant, or if you haven't been pregnant before and already had your babies, you know that pregnancy comes with a lot of ups and downs. For myself, first trimester, I was exhausted all of the time, and
Mhm.
now really learning how to continue to move forward with that as I am about halfway through right now. So I'm very excited, and I know it was definitely God putting Sandra and I together. It was when I first met Sandra. It was, I think, just a little bit after we originally found out we were pregnant, and the fact that she had all the knowledge already. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm about to walk into this season. This is perfect timing. Like, I want all of the info. So if you're like me, ladies out there, or expecting dads, and you have your wife or whatever aspect you're at in that
Yeah.
journey, please feel free to reach out to Sandra. As you can probably already tell in this interview, she is an awesome person and great to work with.
Mm. That is so sweet of you. That is so sweet of you. And yes, tiredness is a thing, right? You've, I'm sure, experienced a lot of things. You're like, what is happening now as your body's trying to create a whole nother being? It takes a lot. Um, it takes a lot. So every step of the way, there'll be new beginnings. And like we were talking about a little bit before the podcast today, you start to learn how to navigate the moments in the moments,
Hmm.
because you can't know what you don't know. And when you haven't lived it yet or haven't experienced it yet, it's really challenging to be prepared ahead of time for all of those different things that happen along the way. So it's going to be amazing. You guys are going to have an amazing time. Lots of learning ahead of you.
Yes, I'm excited and honestly nervous for it, but I know that having the podcast in itself of being able to share with others, that's another goal, is just to be able to hopefully inform those that are also walking the same type of path or the same type of season. And not to say that the podcast is changing at all, it's still all going to be about faith. But I do know that once I become a mom, it will more than likely I'll talk about being a mom as well. And that's just part of growing in your faith as well and part of just growing in life in general.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you'll have lots of questions and you'll end up with lots of great advice, I'm sure, coming your way.
With that, actually, it goes into a question for moms. So, what is the biggest thing you want expecting mamas to know in general and in keeping strong with their faith and relationship with God?
Ooh, that's a great question. So you touched a little bit on the tiredness, right? There's so many changes that are happening inside your body that it can feel very much not like yourself at times. And most of the times, expecting mamas that I'm working with are trying really hard to make sure they're doing all the right things because they want to have a healthy baby. And sometimes it can get a little bit on the stressful side. First of all, don't stress. It will be okay. I say that a lot. And then when it comes to like your faith and your relationship, this is just going to continue to build and grow your relationship on God because becoming a parent, creating a new life, you have to lean in even more, right? Like it's not just about you anymore. It's now about how you're going to prepare for, take care of this life that God's given you in all of their uniqueness. And this is actually for probably both parents, but all of their uniqueness is going to mean that it's going to take some creative space on your own to go, how are they created? How am I created? Like what gifts do I have to help them along the way? So during the pregnancy space, lean in, ask God what you need, what's there for while you're pregnant. Like who do you need in your circle as far as like healthcare providers or other people to speak life into you and breathe. So staying connected and breathing is always a good thing. And then just prepare for after that you're going to be leaning into God a lot and it's all going to be okay. Don't stress. Stress does not help any of it. God takes that from us.
Yes, I will agree on all of it. And it's all really good things that I will definitely be taking in for myself. And if there's anyone else out there that is expecting a little one, please feel free to take those. And I just really like the aspect of the not stressing because it is very, very easy,
Yeah.
especially going into a new season and the day and age that we live in of social media and having everyone have their particular input on it or, oh, this is what worked the best for me in this. And like I've noticed for myself, my algorithm is very much about faith and about babies right now. And it's gotten to a point sometimes I'm like, I cannot look at my phone. I have too much info coming at my face right now. So if you're anything like me in that aspect, just remember to breathe, like Sandra said, and I will definitely be taking that recommendation.
Yeah.
And then I think you touched a little bit on this question, but if there's anything else, what is the biggest thing you want
Okay.
expecting dads to know in helping moms or prepping themselves for a baby?
For the dads out there. There's a lot with that. All of life sometimes is a training ground. And so dealing with and helping mamas who are going through all of these hormonal changes and their body is changing and all of the nesting and all the pieces depending on all the different phases. Dads have a beautiful and unique role in that of being able to come alongside you. So for dads out there, just continue to be like, what I always tell people, put things into perspective. Like, is it difficult for one more time to go get that bean burrito or whatever it is that they're just really needing at that moment? What does that look like, right? In the scope of life. Yes, they might want, a specific. I was a pineapple eater. I literally like could eat an entire pineapple and said, I'm like, it's okay. Like they're gonna be a little off and not themselves. But to be fair, I kind of think that it's God's kind of comical. I think it's his way of training us, right? For dads, you're going to have littles. Like you're going to have littles that then you don't really fully understand. And you still have to learn how to read their cues and when to step in and when to step back. And so you're kind of learning that with your wife because it's not the same as it was before pregnancy when hormones are changing and needs are changing and cravings are increasing. And so it gives you just like a little bit of training ground to have things be thrown off kilter before your new little one's in. So stay connected to God always. That's going to be your rock through all of it. And then, yeah, you're like the backbone often. Often you're the one that's going to be the one that's going to be carrying some of the weight and taking care of. And it's just going to be stretching and growing you. And again, it's just a training ground for all that is to come in life. And it goes fast. I know in the moment, it feels like forever when you're like, and especially if you're irritated about something, but in a blink of an eye it goes fast. And eventually you're like, remember when you just started crying for no random reason? Like everything was at the, and you're like, yes, I do. Do you remember how you responded? Right? Like, yeah, just loved you anyways, just hugged on you, right? That's what you really need. Just some love and some hugs. And so, yes, for both sides, you're learning so much newness about each other, personalities, but also how to get through a hard moment. And it's not always easy.
I love all of it because I mean, with being in this season right now, I've had conversations with my husband of just different things of like, or he'll comment about emotions or I'll comment about something I've said or this and that. And like, my biggest thing I wanted to add with that is just to have communication. I've noticed
Mhm.
that's been the biggest thing that's been the most help is just communicating how I'm feeling, communicating if I don't feel good or whatever it could be. Each trimester, each day, each week has something different in pregnancy and becoming a mom too. Once baby's here, I'm sure it will be a whole nother
Mhm.
step in that an avenue. So yeah, awesome. I'm really excited for all of it. And what that goes into, what would you like the listeners to get out of our conversation today?
Oh my goodness, our conversation has been very large today in lots of areas. So I guess it depends on what season you're in. I would say probably the biggest thing is to continue to walk. I think sometimes we get stuck in a spot where we're just not really sure what God's wanting for us, or we're not sure what we're supposed to do, or it doesn't feel comfortable. So whether that looks like you're in a season of thinking about, are we ready to become a family? Or if you already are in pregnancy season, or if you're in a season of thinking about going to school or making a career change, right? It's going to come and go in different areas of life. But one thing God showed me that I would love it to relay is he move and open doors however he chooses. But if you stand still, sometimes it makes that a little more challenging. It's like walk, take one step in front of the other, and then just keep trusting and listening. And when he opens doors, walk through them. And if he shuts the doors, turn to the next one and see what that looks like. So keep in constant connection and communication with God. Keep walking forward. And again, remember when you look at the big picture, this is all every season, easy, hard, in between, they're all just training grounds. God's training you and giving you the tools you need for the next season that's coming. And so when you kind of look at it in that perspective, what is this for? It makes everything a little more doable.
Love it. That I really like the aspect of the training ground and getting ready for the next season
Mhm.
because that's not only in the season that I'm in with baby coming, but in any aspect. Looking in the rearview mirror, it's always 2020 and seeing how God has worked. And I think those are all really, really good aspects. So, listeners, if you are able to get anything from this episode, please just take to keep in constant communication with the Lord and to always keep walking with Him because He is always there and sees everything, anyways. So, with that, where can people find you after our conversation?
Yeah, I would absolutely love if you want to connect. I am on Instagram. My name on there is Sandra Pierce Nutrition. Pierce is Pearce, Sandra Pierce Nutrition. And then Facebook, you can find me on there, Sandra Pierce RDN. And of course, my website is a great place to connect or get some more information. Or even if you just want to chat, I have free discovery calls for people who are walking through the season or like, is nutrition the right thing for me? And my website, I try to make it easy. It's my name. So it's sandra-pierce.com.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And with that,
Yeah.
listeners, I will make sure to have all of the links below in the description of this episode in case you're driving or doing something that you just can't write everything down right away. I completely understand that. And I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Sandra, for coming on and allowing me to share such a big thing on the podcast with you here.
Absolutely. I was so honored. I was so excited for today. So I've been looking forward to this, as I know you have been. And I'm super excited to continue to see as time goes on how you continue to unroll this new journey for you and your family as it grows. So super excited to keep listening.
Amazing. Thank you.
Wasn't that an amazing episode? I first want to say a huge thank you to you, the listeners, for tuning in, for allowing me to share something so exciting and big that's happening in my life. And I also want to say a huge thank you to Sandra for coming on and being a part of the big announcement. And yes, as you are probably thinking, I will more than likely talk about baby throughout the season of becoming a mom, but that does not mean that this podcast is going to change in the fact of we are still sharing faith. I will still be bringing guest speakers on to talk about their faith journey and walk with the Lord, and I am very excited about the future of the podcast as it is growing and growing and growing. And I again want to say thank you, listeners, for tuning in. And like I say at the end of every single episode, never ever forget, God loves you.